Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Women in Business. It is Wednesday, December 16th, 2020 at 3 p.m. And as usual, I got a little mesmerized by the spinny thing that tells me that we're getting ready to go live, but we're all here and we're ready to go. And I'm so excited to see you all. I'm really excited because I have an amazing guest today, and I think you guys are going to learn so much from her. And I'm going to give you the highlights of her bio first, and then I'll bring her on and we'll just start going. So here we go. AllynMarie Smedley, founder of Smedley Law Group, is a strong advocate for her clients. Her guiding philosophy is that working toward a practical solution to a family law issue is far better for a client and their family emotionally and financially than protracted litigation. One of South Jersey's leading matrimonial lawyers, Ali Smedley, has focused her practice solely in the area of family law, including divorce, pre- and post-marital agreements, support and alimony, child support and custody, college contribution matters, spousal support, grandparent visitation, equitable distribution, paternity determinations, parenting time, domestic violence, non-traditional family law, settlement negotiations, wills, and adoptions. Ms. Smedley joined Trace Jenkins, Trace Atkins is a country singer. Trace Jenkins in 2006 and became a partner in the firm in January 2014. She founded Smedley and Liss, I'll have to ask about that, in October 2015 and launched the Smedley Law Group in December 2019. Ms. Smedley also has a strong commitment to her community, as demonstrated by her many charitable activities. In 2012, she founded the William T. Nace Scholarship Foundation, which provides college scholarships to high school seniors who show financial need, an effort that was recognized in the October 2012 Superwoman issue of South Jersey Magazine. I like that. She's a superwoman. In addition, she sits on the board of directors for the Gateway Community Action Partnership, a community action agency that helps low and moderate income residents of 7 South Jersey communities overcome roadblocks to self-sufficiency. Ms. Smedley also served as a co-coach for Delsey, I'm going to say Delsey, high school's mock trial team for 3 years, working with students to develop their litigation skills in a mock trial setting. Currently, she is the president of the Gloucester County Bar Association, becoming the 8th female president in the association's history. So that's like a serious resume we have going here. So I'm going to pop Ali in here. That's like a serious resume, Ali.
Hi, Christine. Thank you.
Did I get those?
You got all of it right, except yes, it was Smedley and Liss. The only change is I'm actually now the immediate past president of the Gloucester County Bar Association. My tenure ended in June, and I guess I forgot to update my bio.
Okay. All right. Well, that's still, I mean, you know, that's a lot of work that you're doing with running your own company and a foundation and all this other stuff. That's pretty amazing.
I'm busy.
Wow, we're having a little lag here, so I'm just going to see if maybe if I switch us out here. Oh, it's not going to do that for me. Nope, and I guess this is oh, there we go. It doesn't want to play. Let's see if that helps. Whoop, you were still with me, Ali?
I'm still here. Still here.
Okay, there we go. Now we got it.
Okay.
It just went wacky for a second. Sometimes it does that. So we do have people checking in, and I'm really excited by that. So the first thing I want to talk about is your foundation, because I think this is really cool. And it's the William T. Nace Scholarship Foundation, founded in honor of and memory of William Nace, a father, brother, uncle, and educator who passed away in 2004. And it's dedicated to assisting South Jersey high school seniors in following the dream of furthering their education. Now, why is William T. Nace someone in your family or just a friend, or?
He's actually my godfather and my uncle. He's my dad's oldest brother.
Okay. All right. So he obviously was someone who was important to you. Was he, I read a little bit about this. It looked like he did community theater. Was he a teacher or something? And did he have a special?
He was actually an administrator at Rancocas Valley High School in Mount Holly, New Jersey. And he was, prior to being an administrator, he was an English teacher, I believe. And he was involved with the school's theater department. He did a production of The Wizard of Oz. So the race, we host we host a 5K and a 10K race every year. And it's called the Tin Man Race to Oz. And that was because he played the Tin Man in the Rancocas Valley High School production of The Wizard of Oz. So that's where we got that from. Yeah.
So the goal is that you give scholarships to seniors who want to go to college. And I saw somewhere you've given 16 scholarships since 2005.
Yeah, we actually, what's interesting is in the beginning when my Uncle Bill died, the school actually came together and hosted a 5K April of 2005, and they raised a pot of money through that race. And prior to 2012, my dad, who runs the foundation with me, realized that that pot of money was going to go away very shortly. So we decided to start a foundation so we could host our own 5K race. It started out as a 5K, now it's a 5K and a 10K race to raise money to continue to fund that scholarship pot. So we created a nonprofit foundation. We actually have a 501c3 status. And we obtained that a couple years after we formed and got the approval from the IRS. And I am so sorry. He's making an appearance. This is my cat, Sam. Sorry.
Hi,
just to say
Sam.
hi. Okay. Hi, Sam. Bye, Sam. Sorry about that. I knew he was going to do it. I tried.
This is the URL for the foundation if you want to go check it out, because I know you guys are looking for donations too.
We are. We did not have a race this year because of COVID. Well, we have to have insurance, and the possibility of liability was just too big to take on in the event of, that the insurance company wouldn't want to give us coverage for it. So normally what we do is we get sponsors to offset the administrative costs of the race. And then all of the runners are the ones who fund the scholarships. But over the years, sponsorships have dried up, because there's so many 5K and 10K races in the community. So it becomes harder and harder to raise funds throughout the years. But the reason we keep it going is when Bill died, we started finding out that he was this real driving force of the community that we weren't aware of. So he was hanging out with kids in the school who were not your A students. So you would go to the scholarship award ceremonies they would have at the end of the school year. Yeah. You hear like the same names called over and over and over again. And it's always a child who's going, to Princeton or some high level education, and they're just cleaning up scholarships. He started helping kids that were C students, where a little assistance or a push was going to be the difference between them going to community college or not going to college at all. And that was something that was really important to him. And so when we found that out, that was where we told the high school, we want that to be our focus. We want to keep serving these kids where it's not a given that they're going to go to college, that this money might help them. Pardon me again. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to put him on my lap here.
We've had people walk in the background.
He's being relentless.
He wants to be part of the show. We're good.
He does. And I try. He's like right off screen. He's going to take my monitor out in a second. So I'm just going to put him on my lap.
So he can stay on your lap.
So we wanted to keep serving those kids. We wanted to serve the kids where this getting recognized and being recognized for something would push them. And one of the years that we did it, I presented and the recipient's mom came up to me. She's like, you have no idea what this means to me. Now, these scholarships, they're not big. They're $500 each. And the mom came, she's like, this is going to pay for books for us. Like, I didn't know how I was going to pay for that. Yeah. Like, that to me is so impactful for a family where it's not a given, one, that the child's going to go to college, and it's not known how it's going to be paid for once they get in. So to be able to do that and provide that was really something else. Recently, I was just actually contacted by one of his former students. She's my age. She's actually pursuing her doctorate. She was a transplant from Camden, and she ended up in Rancocas Valley, and the kids were not kind to her. And it was a total culture shock for her coming from Camden. And she started spending like her lunch periods, with teachers. And she spent a lot of time with my uncle, and he encouraged her to join the drama department. And she got the role of Dorothy in the production of The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, that's so
and
sweet.
And part of her doctorate's actually in education, I believe. And she started to look him up, found my foundation, realized he had passed, and reached out to me to tell me what an impact he had on her, which I was just blown away by that.
It just goes to show that you never know what little, there's two things I love about this. Number one, that really is illustrative of you never know what little thing you do that's going to make a big impact with someone. And the second thing is I love the idea of recognizing the students who don't get all the awards and who don't get, because, if you are like the top student or the top athlete or whatever, there are going to be tons of people falling over themselves to give you stuff and help you and tell you how amazing you are and how bright your future is. If you're just like a middle of the pack student, there aren't a lot of people going, good for you.
And that can make all the difference to somebody, between them saying, screw it, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go, I'm just not going to do anything to better myself because nobody's ever recognized that anything I've done is worthwhile. Or going, maybe it's worth it to me to go and try to see what I can do and get an associate's, do something. And that's not to say that moving on from high school into a trade or something is not valued, because it absolutely is. Some of my highest earning clients are in the trades, actually. But for a kid who might want to go to college but doesn't feel like they have that ability or that they don't belong there, getting something like this, having your name called at a recognition ceremony, can be a giant push for them, because a lot of times they don't feel like they belong in those circles. And this helps them feel like they belong there.
Yeah, I can see that totally. I can also see how if you were teetering on the fence, something like this would push you in the direction of, okay, I'm going to take a chance on seeing what else I can do rather than not. Yeah. So I love this whole thing. I'm going to throw up the banner again, because if people are looking for a good place to donate some money and help some kids out, this is a great place to do it. And
there's a contact form on the website that would be fantastic. I'd love to hear from people. I want to spread out through a lot of different high schools in South Jersey. We just don't have the funds to do it right now. So that would absolutely be a dream of mine.
Well, and the other thing that I always think too, and one of the reasons why this show goes out into the world, is that I like talking to people who are doing something like this, because there may be somebody who has a similar idea in their community but doesn't know how to do it. And if I can say, well, Ali did it, contact Ali.
Yeah. And it's not as hard as you would think.
Well, that was kind of my next question. Never having put together a foundation, I'm assuming you have to apply or register or whatever to get your 501c status or whatever it is.
So there's two different stages. So we're a New Jersey nonprofit, and that's what we got first. When we formed, you form an entity with the state, and we formed as a New Jersey nonprofit organization. So that was what our initial registration was. And we were just simply a New Jersey nonprofit for a few years. Then the application for the 501c3 was like 20 pages or something. And they came out with a simplistic application for entities that bring in less than $50,000 per year. And I was like, great, that's us. That makes my life so much easier. So I did it's probably called the easy application, which is what they do like with the taxes and everything. And the short form application was so much easier because the revenues are so much less. I was able to do it myself, and not because I'm an attorney, but because I could read the instructions and figure out what to do. You send in the application and they sent us an approval. So it was not particularly difficult. Now you have to draft, like articles of incorporation and things like that, but I practice family law. So that's definitely not my wheelhouse. I just did some researching online, found the internal documents I needed, and was able to set it all up. There's definitely attorneys out there that can help people with that if a person doesn't feel comfortable doing it. But the registration with each individual state, I would assume, is very similar. New Jersey has a business gateway. You go in and click the boxes and set up what it is you want to do. And then, like I said, the 501c3, when I did it, probably was a paper application. I'm sure it's online now, because I know when I do my annual filings, they're online.
Yeah. So. Well, I love the whole idea of this. And I just think that was one of the things when you sent your bio to me, I was like, oh, we got to talk about that. But just because first of all, I have to say teachers are close to my heart because my grandmother was a teacher. And now I am honestly thinking I would love to do a foundation in her name, because I think that would really be cool. Just a great way to memorialize her. So you got me thinking. So there you go.
Good. But, that's good. I come from a family of educators, so it was a pretty easy thing to do. And like I said, it's just my dad and I. So when we do these races, we get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go out to our site at, dark 30 and set up the tents and, set up the course. And it's just us. And we have a race administrator who will do the timing and like all the official stuff. But, the planning, the course plotting, all that stuff, that's just me and my dad. So.
Wow. That's a big thing. And then I'm assuming you and your dad also make the decisions as to who gets the scholarship.
No, actually we deferred that to the high school, because we figure the high school knows the students better than we ever could.
Oh, that's true.
We asked them to pick. We gave them the parameters and said, these are the kids we want you to look at.
Okay.
So they've done a really good job with that. And I trust that they know their student body well enough to select recipients that really kind of share, our mission.
Okay, so your scholarship then is not something that people apply for. It's just something that's awarded.
Right now it's something they apply to it, I think, through the school. So right now we are only at Rancocas Valley High School with the idea that we want to spread out throughout different high schools in South Jersey, with the idea that the kids can apply and the school knows that the selection criteria are those middle of the road kids, ones who aren't getting all the scholarships. So they go through the applications and then they filter down into the student that best matches the ideals of the scholarship.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. It's one of my favorite things right now. I'm just like, well, I just love the idea of, we were talking prior to going on air that both of us got degrees in non-traditional ways. And I think non-traditional students of any kind, or students who aren't necessarily the standout, major achievers, often get overlooked. So I just love it that you guys are giving one of these kids some kudos and some help, which I think is amazing. So
I think it's really important.
I do want to talk a little bit about the fact that we both got our degrees or some of our degrees non-traditionally, so to speak, which I feel like you're a kindred spirit now, because we both went through the working full time and going to school. So now you got your law degree that way. I got degrees in business and marketing, which I thought was hard enough. I can't imagine getting a law degree.
It was an experience.
Oh,
it's definitely experience.
Well, I guess one of the things that I always find interesting, and part of the reason that I brought this up, is because a lot of the women that I've talked to have started a business or gotten an advanced degree or done something in kind of a non-traditional way because they had a drive or a goal that they wanted to get to. What about law? What about that drew you or interested you?
So I'm laughing because the way I decided to become a lawyer is kind of amusing, at least to me. So I graduated my undergrad degree. My undergrad degree is in marketing, actually.
Okay.
I graduated college. I did not get a job in my field, and I went and started selling jewelry for Hellsberg Diamonds. That was what I did. I got married. I started in September of 98. I got married in February of 99. And in July of 99, I got in a car accident while I was at work driving to the bank. I got rear-ended sitting at a stoplight. Not anything real bad. It was a low impact accident, but I had a herniated disc that got re-aggravated by the accident. And about 6 weeks after that, I was home and I bent over the sink and couldn't stand up.
Ooh.
And like horrific pain. I could not move. My husband had to like kind of like drag me onto a bed. Long story short, I was out on 6 weeks of disability. Right before Christmas in a jewelry store where that is the busiest time of the year.
Yeah, where you make all your commissions.
Was not well received. Yeah, was not well received. So I had a lot of time to think, and I was like, do I really want to do retail for the rest of my life? Is this what I want to do? You know, you can't make, you can make a living at it, but you can't make a great living at it. And you know, what else can I do? And my whole thought process was, well, I had a business law class in college and I got an A and I liked it. And I thought it was interesting. Maybe I'll go to law school. So I said to my husband, I said, remember that business law class I took? He said, yeah, because we went to the same college, my husband and I. I said, remember that class I took? He says, yeah. I said, I got an A. I said, what would you think if I went to law school? He goes, okay. So I went, all right, I'll apply to law school. And that was, you'll have people that say that was my lifelong dream. I always wanted to do it. I was like really just kind of like rolling through my head, like what else could I be good at? And I went, I'll go to law school. And so I took the LSAT and I was in school that following September 2000 was when I started.
That's crazy. I love that.
That's very crazy. Yes. Completely crazy.
I think, you know, what's fun about that is sometimes the thing that turns out to be one of the best things in your life is something that just happens by, I mean, my original plan was I was going to be an international journalist. I was going to wear a trench coat and, you know, go around Europe and, I don't know, chase spies or whatever you do. And then, you know, when I went back to school the second time, I was like, okay, I got to do something more practical. So I got a business degree and I got a marketing degree. But, you know, it was the same kind of thing. I was like, okay, what can I do? I'm a writer. Well, what do writers do well, marketing. Okay, advertising, marketing. Okay, I'll get a marketing degree. And then it wasn't that much more to get a business degree. So I was like, okay, I'll take a couple extra classes and I'll get two. And that's kind of how, I mean, there was no like real, I mean, if somebody said marketing your passion, I'm like, not really. It was just, I mean, it's been a really fun career, but I love that. I got a business law class and I thought it was cool. And
it was cool. Like, I did well. I'll go to law school. Sure.
Now, law school, though, I mean, at least at the end of mine, I didn't have to pass the bar. So
yeah, that was a whole other experience. So my daughter, I was pregnant my entire last year of law school. And so my daughter was born. I had a really medically complicated pregnancy, and my daughter ended up being born the week before the bar exam. And I'd known for a month prior to that I was going to have to withdraw because they thought I was going to have a stroke. So they said, you have to go on bed rest. You can't do anything. You can't take the bar. You can't do any of this. So when my friends, my classmates were taking the bar exam in July of 2004, I was leaving the hospital with my daughter. So I actually didn't take the bar until February of 2005 when she was about 7 months old, which was a whole other experience.
Good Lord, woman.
I don't do anything easy.
Your last year of law school, you're pregnant with a complicated pregnancy, and then you have a baby and you take the bar exam. That's like Superwoman times about 20. I mean,
or just insanity. It's like, I was like, okay. So that was the first time I had been away from her when I took Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So I was gone for 3 days. So I left her with my husband and hold myself up.
Oh, no stress there.
No, none.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, what I love though is, I mean, it's, you know, I think sometimes people don't give women credit for how much we can do and how much we can handle. And that's like some serious stuff there, man. And I almost said another word, but I would say that's like some serious shit there, you know?
Yeah, it was. I mean, and I had no option. Like, you go through 4 years of school. What are you going to do? Not take the bar exam? I couldn't take it when I was supposed to take it. And I had gotten all of these, like waivers and exemptions. Like, they were going to seat me in the back so I could go to the bathroom as many times as I needed, because my original due date was August 11th. So the bar was like July 29th, like around then. So it was like right under the wire. I was trying to slide this bar exam in before having the baby. And I had all of this like stuff set up, and then they were like, nope, you're done. I was like, really? Yep. Can't take it. All right. They're like, you're going to have a stroke if you don't stop, essentially. So I was like, all right, I'll stop. And the only option was to take it again the following February, which was good because it's actually less people. Because the February bar is for your December graduates, so there's not as many, and all the people that failed the July bar. So less people, it was less intimidating, and it worked out. Wow.
Well, I got to say, I give you a ton of credit for that one, because I can't imagine. I thought mine was tough. I think you win. So
I'm not sure I want to win in this instance.
But I admire the hell out of that. I just got to say that. But since we have you here and you have this law degree, I do want to talk to you, because I want to pick your brain about something that I think will be definitely interesting to the ladies that are watching, or even the men that are watching for that matter. And that's divorce and business ownership. Because we talked about this a little bit before we went on air too. And one of the things that is pretty common to a lot of the people who watch this podcast is that they own a business. And it's often a business that they started themselves. Their husband doesn't have ownership of it or anything. But from some of the research that I did, I saw that there are states where whether or not the husband actually had anything to do with starting, running, managing, funding the business, they can still potentially have a stake in it, so to speak. And I wanted to ask you about that. And I understand if you can only speak to the state that you're in, but I'm assuming a lot of the ideas will translate.
Yeah, they really do. So I'm in New Jersey. So anything I say is going to be limited to my knowledge of New Jersey divorce law and distribution of assets. But in New Jersey, having a business, if you acquired it during the marriage, it's a marital asset, regardless of whether your spouse owns it with you, works in it with you, contributed to it independently financially, say from their income, because in New Jersey, all income brought into a marriage is marital income. So your earnings. And I'll use myself as an example. My husband works, he's an assistant manager for Lowe's. So he gets a regular W-2 paycheck. It goes into our checking account. I don't take that money and put it into the business per se, but I divert my efforts into the business. So my income derived from the business and his income are both marital assets. If I took our savings and then plopped it into the business, it's kind of taking that joint marital income and converting it into the business. The business is not, because I own it, is not exempt. So his interest in that case, because he's a non-owning, non-working spouse, is not, at least in New Jersey, typically 50%. It could be because it's fact specific, but typically a non-owner, non-working spouse's interest is much lower, and they don't actually claim an ownership piece of the business. So I wouldn't have to, again, using myself as an example, make my husband a percentage owner in Smedley Law Group. What I would have to do is my business would have to get valued by a forensic accountant.
Right.
We would determine the value of the business, and he would get a piece of that in terms of a monetary payment that I would have to make, either in installments or a lump sum or offset against other assets or something like that. And that's how you would handle kind of the business distribution, at least in New Jersey. It gets complicated when you get married and say you have the business before you get married. So if I had a practice before my marriage to my husband, I bring it in. So you have what's a premarital asset. If I then start taking marital efforts, marital funds and things and pulling them into the business, then you have a commingled asset. So it's very hard, at least in New Jersey. It's very hard here to fully insulate a business from a divorce. It's not impossible. It's just because there's so many, like, because the way New Jersey treats marital income and things of that nature and commingling, that in a lot of instances, there's going to be some portion that's going to be set aside for the non-owning, non-working spouse.
So even if they have nothing to do with it, even if they've never...
My husband has nothing to do with my practice. Nothing.
I was going to say, I mean, it's not like he's coming in and giving law advice on weekends or something.
No, he has nothing. The only tie he has to my practice is our last name. That's it. So he has nothing to do with it. And if I decided to divorce him tomorrow, sorry, honey, he would have an equitable claim in the value of the practice. He would. It doesn't matter that he's got no activity or any stake in it.
And I'm going to put up here the URL for the law firm just so you can see what we're talking about here if you want to go check that out. Okay, so here's where the wheels fall off this bus for me.
Okay.
And I know it's law, so nobody cares what I think. But I guess my question is, and I mean, does a prenup make a difference in this?
Yes, a prenup could make a difference. It could insulate the business. Prenups could really set the terms for anything. You, with the exception of, at least again in New Jersey, dealing with children, you can really agree to anything. You can agree to alimony or no alimony. You can agree to the immunity of certain assets or the non-immunity of certain assets. So I could enter a prenup that says, I have this business, and no matter what happens to it during the marriage, it's mine at the end and you get nothing. Regardless of whether you put funds into it, regardless of whether you work in it, you can completely insulate the asset by way of a prenup.
Okay, so if you have a business prior to marriage and it's your business, not the couple's business, then it may well be worth it to get a prenup so
absolutely,
that you can preserve your assets.
And you can decide, because if I'm the non-owner spouse going in and I'm being on the receiving end of the prenup, I'm going to say, well, what if we have savings that you all of a sudden need to tap for your practice? Like, what happens to that money? Do I get it back? Does that entitle me to some stake? So there's consideration. So if you're the business owner considering a prenup, it's probably worth it to make it look like there's some sort of give and take and it's not completely one-sided, to say, all right, if we have to pull some marital funds, and again, depending on what your state would define as marital, into this asset that's considered immune, do you at least get that money kind of refunded in a sense? You know what I mean? To make it at least more palatable for the non-owner spouse to sign off on something like that. Now, some people will do anything. Those, as long as you have, in New Jersey, you have to have, disclosures. You have to have either a waiver of counsel or a knowing waiver of counsel or a review by an attorney. Sorry. As long as you meet all the statutory requirements, it's valid, and they're hard to overturn. So you want to make sure that you kind of have all your ducks in a row. And one way, at least to me, that makes the agreement easier to swallow for the person who's going to walk away with minimal, because these are usually done to protect people with significant assets, or at least assets that they want to protect. To me, like if you said, and this kind of goes towards my practice philosophy of not trying to litigate the heck out of everything, is coming at it from a practical solution of, if I'm representing the non-owner spouse, what is reasonable? Well, to me, what's reasonable is if there's marital funds that have to get dumped into the business, maybe that money gets refunded, or that person's 50% of that money gets refunded back to them in the event of a divorce. I've did a prenup once where it was written by another attorney, and it was pretty much like, if the money came from wife, it didn't matter what happened to it. If it was wife's money pre or post marriage and it passed through an asset, it was hers at the end. It didn't matter what happened to it. So it was very, like, to me, I thought, like, my God, if these people ever divorce, it's going to be a nightmare to like sort this all out. Because how do you trace, like, the source of funds? Yeah,
eventually.
Like, if you make a mortgage payment, how do you trace all those monies? And the guy, the gentleman that I was representing was like, I'm fine with this. So I explained all the pitfalls. It was like, here's the 18 different ways this could go wrong for you. He just wanted to marry that girl. So my job is to give the advice. If he doesn't take it, that's on him. I at least did my job and told him, here's the problems I see with this agreement. So if you have an asset that you're looking to protect, you kind of just need to be aware on the other side, what you could be dealing with too, because if you come up with something that's so rigid and so in favor of one party, you might meet some resistance. So just kind of having a practical approach to protecting the asset, with the goal being that you want to retain the asset at the end and give as little as possible to your potential ex-spouse. Sometimes throwing a few bucks somebody's way to kind of smooth the waters is not a terrible way to go.
Sure.
But it really depends on what your goals are. Some people are like, they're not getting anything. If you can get them to sign off and agree, then that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Just depends on the personality of the other party.
Never having been married, I have to say I haven't had to deal with this, and that's probably because I wouldn't do well with it. But I guess I have to ask, because I know this is something that, particularly when you're approaching getting married and you're looking at, you're not thinking, well, sometime down the road, I may be in a fight with this person and not want to be married to them anymore. And you don't want to think that. So I guess that's my next question, because I think, what advice would you give people who are contemplating getting married, especially female business owners? Should they be doing prenups? Should they be, you think
you absolutely should. If you have a business, the goal is to protect it. And especially, different states have different rules. Some states may, I don't know across the country, but there may be something that doesn't allow for a premarital or exempt component, or says that if you do X, this now commingles it much more clearly than it would say in New Jersey.
Okay.
So I think if you have a business, you want to protect yourself. And it's not saying the marriage is going to fail, right? That if you do a prenup, you're planning that the marriage is going to be doomed, because you don't know. You could change. The other party could change. You both could change. Things change. Nobody gets married with the idea that they're going to get divorced. But if it happens, I would kick myself in the ass, pardon my language, to have something and not protect it. When I got married, I had nothing, right? So everything that I have and I've created, my husband has a stake in, by virtue of the fact that we got married when we were 22 years old and we had literally nothing when we got married. Other people, if I divorced him and I got remarried, you better bet I'd have a prenup protecting my practice. I'm not gonna share it. That's my baby.
Well, and I mean, that's because I know women who own businesses of all sizes, from, like a business that's in their back bedroom and they make some extra, fun cash with it, to people who have employees and a facility, and, it's all over the gamut. But I mean, I know how hard these women work.
Yeah. And you want to be sure that, God forbid the worst happens, that you are protected, or at least what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Some people may say, I want my spouse to have a piece of this, but maybe you can predetermine how the value is going to be calculated, what their interest is going to be fixed at. Maybe you say, you know what, we get divorced, you can get 20% of the value, and here's how that value is going to be determined, or here's who we're going to use to calculate that value. These are the parameters. As of this date, it's this forensic, valuation methodology. There's lots of different things you can put in to kind of say how that process is going to go. It's not just you get it or you don't, but you can also set out how it's going to be done if you're going to do that. Because some people say, if you're married, say 3 years, and you have a business and there's nothing that happens in the marriage that impacts it. There's no transfer of earning power. There's no cash, infusion into the business, anything like that. That non-working spouse's entitlement is going to be significantly less than, say, in a situation where I've been married. I'll be married 21 years in February. Mm-hmm. So, and I started this practice a year ago, but I've been in a partnership or of one form or another for the past almost 7 years. So there's always been some sort of stake in it. is it less equitable that a spouse that has kind of stuck by and supported an owner in various ways through, thin cash times, through infusing money into the business, through working long work hours, time out of town, things like that, that they get zero. And those are all considerations when you're talking with somebody about a prenup. Is you could do stages too. If the marriage craps out at 5 years, you get this. If the marriage dies at year 10, you get, between 5 and 10, you get that. Sure. If you're in it for 20, maybe hit more of a jackpot. The law's really interesting in that the settlement agreements and prenups and things like that, you can literally create anything. Judges are super limited in like what they can do in crafting decisions and things like that. They're limited by, case law and statutes and prior precedent. When you take the courts out of it, you can create literally anything. So a prenup could have any kind of distribution scheme you could think of, as long as you can get your spouse to sign off on it. So it's really, what are your goals? Is your goal to completely protect the asset? Is your goal to have a fair distribution of the asset? Is your goal to completely divide the asset 50-50, even though it may not be warranted to be divided that way in a court of law? Because there could be other considerations. It could be, I'm willing to do 50-50 if you give me a waiver of alimony. You won't get any alimony, but I'll give you more. But I'll give you more of the business in exchange for an alimony waiver. So there's every part of an agreement is it's not insulated from the other. They're kind of all linked together. So one of the things I'll say a lot in settlement agreements is, in consideration of the terms of this agreement, because there's moving parts. There's child support that could be tied to alimony, that could be tied to asset distribution. And so when you start shifting, this one this way, like this, and all over the place, they're all linked. You change one, something else changes. So for me, maybe I'd be willing to part with more of my business to avoid paying alimony if I'm a business owner.
So
and one thing I'll say,
on what your priorities are.
Right. And I'll tell you in this, it's going to sound sexist, but it's not. Every female client I've ever had that has to pay alimony is pissed off about it. It's just a reality and I think it's because of the stereotype that women are more the alimony recipients than the payors. So every time I've had a female payor, it's because it's two things. They're very successful or their husband is kind of a deadbeat. And so you have long-term marriages where you have a dynamic where you have a high-powered woman and a husband that may not be carrying his weight, and they've been content with that dynamic for the marriage, but now the dynamic is coming back and biting them in the rear end at the end of the day. And so I personally would rather part with a larger sum of cash on the business to get that alimony waiver and be like, I'm done with you, than to have to keep writing checks every week from now until God knows when. So there are considerations.
Especially if you know that the other person isn't necessarily a go-getter. So,
right, because they may not better their situation, and you can't count on them getting remarried or getting a girlfriend to form the basis of a cohabitation claim to try to limit your exposure there.
That's a good point. It's something to look at. So I have two questions that occurred to me while we were talking about this that I want to put out here. First one, is there such a thing as a postnup? Can you structure an agreement after you're married to say, in the event, this is what will happen?
You can. And there's different requirements in every state as to what's considered a valid agreement. But you can agree to, if we get divorced, here's what's going to happen. Gosh, I haven't done one of these in forever. I'm fairly certain. So anybody in New Jersey, if you ever come to me, I will research this, I promise. I'm pretty sure in New Jersey, you have to have some sort of consideration for that type of agreement to do it after you're married. Again, it's not something that comes up very often. So every state's requirements in that regard may be different. But subject to what an individual state's statutory or case law requirements are, yeah, you could agree to that. And like I said, in New Jersey, and it's been ages, it's not very common. A lot of times what will happen is parties will separate and they'll reach an agreement to get back together. And so it's kind of in consideration of getting back together. Here's how we're going to do things. So,
But it's not
much
like
less
we're
common.
happily married and everything's fine. But just in case we want to put this together.
Far less common.
Okay.
Because I think you need to have, because the prenup, the consideration is the marriage. You know, you have the wedding. That's the transformative thing.
Right.
So afterwards, there's really no, like, what's the consideration for the terms of the agreement? Now, would it be enforceable? I don't know that it's specifically barred in New Jersey without consideration. Like I said, that's one of those things. If I had a client coming in with that issue, I would research it beforehand, just so I'm dead certain that I know exactly, I'm giving my client the right advice. So assuming that there is no prohibition, you could theoretically do the same thing, but you would want to definitely make sure that it's permitted in your state before doing it. Just, you know, waste your time. And any attorney is going to look that and check that before wasting your time and money with something like that.
Well, and I was just curious because I assumed, not having ever really heard of that it probably wasn't something that was commonly done.
Yeah, it's not. I think most people kind of sort it out.
Well, I imagine it would be a lot more complicated by the fact that once you're married, a lot of the commingling you were talking about is happening. So it makes it much harder to say that, you know, and it's just interesting to me because as women have gotten more into the workforce and more to starting their own business, all of this stuff that was kind of all a little more cut and dried in a lot of people's minds isn't anymore because, you know, though I guess this is a question. If my husband had a business and I had been but I had been, you know, performing the traditional housewife sort of role and taking care of the kids and everything, if we split up, would I automatically get part of his business? Or is that
Same thing.
So
same exact thing.
So it just basically is based on how long you were married and an assumption that some of the marital assets of some sort would have been used to support the business.
Yeah, I mean, so if it's a business that's created during the marriage, it's just a marital asset by the fact that it was created at that point. So where you get into, you know, transfer of earning power and things like that, where you talked about maybe like a stay-at-home mom, that plays into alimony. So that's completely different, at least in New Jersey, from equitable distribution, which is a distribution of assets and debts. So we have a statutory scheme for both. So the equitable distribution statute will go through, I forget, it's like 12 or 14 factors that list out, you know, all the things the court's supposed to consider when looking at the distribution of a particular asset. They look at, you know, the contribution to the asset, the increase in value of the asset, things of that nature. So if the asset was acquired during the marriage, that by itself, regardless of the parties' roles, is what determines that it's in the pot. At least in New Jersey, if it's acquired during the marriage, it's in. How it's distributed is based on whether the parties work the business together or one party worked it to the exclusion of the other. And that's where you get that disparate distribution of the practice itself or the business, where you have one person. So to use myself as an example, again, my husband isn't an attorney. He doesn't work in my firm. He has no ownership, management, oversight, stake in it whatsoever. He's the non-owner, non-operating spouse. The likelihood of him getting 50% in the event of a divorce would be very small.
So when we're talking about getting a percentage, does that basically mean you would have to buy them out or give them money?
Yes.
Or
so you hire. So
we're not talking like they would actually get like
no, he doesn't get like 30% of the stock in the practice or the business. Although I'm certain in some cases that could happen. In New Jersey, it's disfavored. They do not want, when you get divorced, they want you to be done. They do not want parties tied together. So it is, they're not going to have two ex-spouses be co-owners in a business together, even if they owned it and worked it together, because it's not ideal. You're getting divorced. What are the odds of you being able to work together?
Right. Well, and
post-judgment, you know, it's subsequent.
Want to be together.
Exactly. So they don't want to keep people together. So somebody's always got to go. So when I refer to him getting his interest, it's a monetary interest. So the way you determine that, at least in New Jersey, is you hire a forensic accountant. That accountant then reviews the books and records of the business. They'll do like a 3 to 5 year look back. It's dependent upon the type of industry and things like that. And then they will do evaluation as of the date of complaint of the business as an ongoing concern. And there's different valuation methods, but that's that could be a whole show for itself. At any rate, the forensic accountant, because lawyers are not accountants and we have no business doing this kind of work, will come up with a bunch of schedules after reviewing all the books and records and say the business is worth X. Like I just had one done for a client of mine, and they said the value was 3.1 million. So that was a business that had 2 locations. It had it was very equipment heavy. It had real estate. And that, with all that taken into consideration, inclusive of the debt, the value is 3.1 million. Wife is going to get a chunk of that. Anywhere from 20 to 40%. They don't recommend the percentage. That gets fought out with the attorneys. Right. And again, it's specific, shorter marriage, lesser percentage, longer marriage, maybe higher, but it depends on what other assets and things you're looking at, to figure out what the other person gets. But in that instance, the client will end up making some sort of payment to her so to give her interest. Correct. So he retains, and the business is his. It's solely titled in his name. She's never worked. She worked in it as like an office administrator, just so she could have some earnings on the books. But she was not an owner or anything like that. So he'll retain it, completely exclusive of her, and then he'll make payments to her, or we'll offset it against some other asset he's got an interest in. And that's how you distribute the business. So it's not like the person actually getting like an actual, chunk of the business at the end of the day.
Makes sense. I just have to throw this comment up here because it made me laugh. You had a little glitch a minute ago, and Gosta, who is our watcher from, I think Sweden is where he's from, he says, "Get the web link up again, please." Good.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you.
I'm learning so much. So I have another question and honestly, if you come back again, I am seeing more of these in our future because stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you. Absolutely. I'd love to.
But the question I have for you is, because I did a show about a month ago where I talked about, I called it Bloom Where You're Planted, and it was basically about the historical rights that women have gotten over the years, and how some of those rights happened a lot later than, like, in my lifetime. I'm 51. There were things that happened that I was like, oh my God, it's only been that. So I guess my question for you would be, what do you think is the number one mistake that women are making in terms of, I guess, safeguarding themselves or taking care of their assets? Or I don't know, you pick it, but
I would say the absolute worst thing a woman, and this really applies to anybody, but I see it more with women, is not knowing your financial picture. I have so many women that come in who don't know what their husbands make, who don't know what they own, who don't know what their debts are, who don't know where they bank, where their investments are. They know nothing. One of my favorite stories, and she's one of my favorite clients, years ago, came to us. Her husband had worked out of state. So they lived in New Jersey and he worked in Virginia, and he just didn't come home one weekend. Like, that was it. That's how she found out her marriage was ending.
Oh, that's awful.
It was terrible. And she came in for a consultation, and I was an associate attorney at Trace & Jenkins. And I remember her sitting there crying at the conference table going, well, the mortgage isn't paid. And I became her partner, said to her, well, is he putting his paycheck in the bank account? And she said, well, yeah. And she goes, do you have a checkbook? And the woman looked so surprised. And she said, well, yeah. She goes, then write a check and pay the mortgage. Like, it was such a basic thing, right? And this poor woman had been used to being taken care of for so long by her husband, who had paid the bills. She didn't work. They had 2 daughters. She took care of her daughters. He paid the bills. He ran the finances. She didn't know anything. I had to piece her case together out of, shoestring and gum, because the guy wasn't participating. She knew nothing. And it was kind of coaching her through to get me all the information that I needed to get her case, to the finish line. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, today she lives on her own. She's engaged. She's, just a fantastic person. And it was like getting her through that process and showing her how important it was to know about her own life, that kind of got her the strength to stand on her own 2 feet and be able to move forward by herself.
Sure.
That I loved. And so what I see over and over and over again is women who have no idea. And so I'll tell clients, when he's not home, go through everything. Go through your file cabinets, go through your bookshelves, go through your home office. Start figuring out, where do you bank? Where are your investments? What credit cards do you hold? Run your credit report and see what's on there. Because so many people are content to rely on their spouse to hold that information. Forget about divorce. What if he drops dead?
Yeah.
What if he drops dead at work and he never comes home, and you have, like, you don't know who holds your mortgage. How's your house titled? Where's your bank accounts? What bills do you have to pay every pay cycle? So many people, and again, it's disproportionately women, but I've met guys who have same thing, have no clue whatsoever as to what they have. You need to know from a basic getting through life standpoint. Forget divorce, forget somebody dropping dead. Like, you just need to know, because you need to know. You need to be independent and be aware of what you have. Because if you don't do that and something unexpected happens, be it a divorce, be it a death, be it an accident, where somebody ends up in a coma or disabled for a period of time, and they can't relay that information to you, your life has become so much harder. And that's really, it is so important to do that, to know those things, because the ramifications, if you don't, are just really so very great.
That makes total sense to me. And I would agree with that, because I know people like that are just really, they don't really have any idea of what's happening. And I think for women too, because I know I'm guilty of this sometimes. I mean, I'm not married, so obviously I handle all my financial stuff, but sometimes I don't even know things that I probably should know, because I'm just kind of going, it's all okay. I don't really want to think about it.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's unpleasant to think about. You don't want to think about it, but you should know, just to know. Like, at the end of the day, it's just really good knowledge to have. What if both,
I agree.
Write it down, save it somewhere, because what if both people end up sick or dead at the same time, and then your kids are left trying to figure everything out on their own? Like, that's,
Well, and the whole thing of, like you said, what if there's accident? What if somebody has a debilitating illness or a long-term illness where you're trying to deal with caring for them, and, and they're not in a position to be thinking about, where's the stuff to pay the mortgage, or, how do we do this, whatever it is.
And you lose yourself in that before you think about it. The bank's knocking on your door, which is,
and then you have that, even more stress than you really need or want. Yeah. So I think, and I also think from the standpoint of also safeguarding yourself if you do end up in a situation where your marriage is dissolving. If you have good knowledge of what's happening, then you also don't have to do what you were saying, where you're trying to get somebody's circumstances together, and you don't, I mean, I know my parents divorced when I was 19, something like that. And my dad had taken a bunch of money, some of it, which was earmarked for my sister and I to go to college, and it disappeared. And that never found out where it went.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it was like, he knew this was coming. He was planning for it. And,
they planned.
And my mother was, an administrator at a nursing home. She'd worked up. She was a smart lady, but most of the financial stuff was him.
Well, and what also happens is paperwork disappears. So they file for divorce, and then they lock people out of the accounts. Bank statements, statements go disappear. So if you know all that stuff in advance and you get locked out, at least we have a starting point, right? You're not trying to find the information after the fact.
Right.
The paperwork disappears. You should be able to say, well, I know we bank at this bank and that bank, and our investments are held over here. So even if the paperwork goes away, I can still get it. Or at least know what I'm asking for, if nothing else, from the other side.
And that's the thing, is it's like, I think a lot of the problem is that people don't want to admit or accept that there's a possibility that something, it's like, if we don't think about it and we don't acknowledge it,
it's like putting your fingers in your ear.
Yeah. If you just, kind of go la, 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 it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Like, and you hope it doesn't, but it's better to be prepared just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's better to know it and never need it than, God forbid, need it and now you don't have it.
Not know it. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Well, we are coming up on an hour. It goes fast, doesn't it?
It does.
We get talking and it's like, oh, hey. And I know you had things you needed to do. So I'm going to say thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I definitely, I think what I'll do is maybe throw it out there and say, hey, do you have questions? And maybe we can do another one of these and answer some questions for people. I think that would be so great because I don't know anything about legal stuff. So it's like, now I know a lawyer. I'm very excited. So I just thank you so much for this. This was really informative and very helpful. And I'm so glad we finally got to do this. It was really great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to pop you out and say goodbye.
All right.
And thank you. This was really
Thank you guys.
amazing. All right, everybody. That was really cool. I think I will go ahead and put a post up in Women in Garment Decoration, and we can get some questions together and maybe have Ali on for another session. Thank you, everybody who is here today. I really appreciate it. And I'm not sure what next week's going to be yet, but I'll let you know. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. And thank you to Ali. She's amazing. And I will talk to you all next week. Bye.